welcome back to another Re-Education Experience podcast. With me, your host, Darren Langille. Like you've heard me say, you always get me. So far, anyways, every episode has had me involved. A lot of them are solo, but more importantly, they're bringing on great guests. And the last couple guests I brought on actually weren't real estate related, but today we are bringing on somebody that speaks our language here as realtors, but speaking also a new language that all of us as realtors need to kind of figure out. So the guest today is going to be an awesome little conversation. I've gotten to know this man for about a year now. I think almost just about a year that we've been able to connect and met in person just not too long ago down in Nashville as well for the first time. So in today's episode of the Reeducation Experience, we're going to be welcoming on a man by the name of Adam Gillespie. Now, Adam has this he's kind of a up and coming dynamic kind of figure in the real estate industry around real estate and technology. Adam's journey has been through from, like, as you can see behind his screen, if you're watching this on YouTube, is from the music industry and transitioning into real estate. And now he's found this crazy passion for AI and the CRM and kind of combination of all of it. So he's based in Colorado, and I think it's Denver, but I might be wrong. And he's the founder of also something called the Agent Prompt University. So again, he's taken this passion and transitioned it into an opportunity for all of us to dive in and learn more from. So I'm sure I'll probe him a bunch about that, but it specializes to help realtors out. So we're going to dive into a whole bunch of questions today. How AI is revolutionizing things, the landscape is changing, how we can use it. He's been like flipping around with this stuff for a while and has found a lot of best practices. So Adam, my friend, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you. And I missed a lot about your history and stuff, but anything else of super note worthy that we need to get out about, like, who you are and your rocker? Tell me.
Hey man, thanks for having me on the show. Such an honor. You're an inspiration and an influence, man. So this is super cool to be on here. But no, you hit the nail on the head. I'm a washed up musician that just turned real estate, and then I got a little geeky tendencies to myself. So naturally, I fell right into the CRM world, and with AI, once ChatGPT actually came out and was pretty widely available in November of 2022, I've spent most of my time there. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Your so how long you been in the industry now?
So I'm going on 9 years next year. Will be 9 years as a real estate agent.
Oh
So
wow. So you've been doing
yeah,
this a while. So most of your career is without AI, basically, right?
most of it. Yeah, well, sort of. So I've always dabbled a little bit in it. So funny story is back in 2004 when my band was getting started, we had this social media site called MySpace. Some of your listeners may remember it, but it was like Facebook but different, where we could have like people put basic comments on your front page profile, right? So we had a robot back then that was programmed to take my band's music off of our MySpace player and post the song in the comments section of famous people. And then it
Mm.
would be on autoplay. So it would ramp up the plays on our player. And then that helped MySpace Music put our music up a little bit higher in the charts. And they had like a MySpace chart of music. And we started kind of blowing up online. And, marketing 101, right? Like, you're as big as you perceive yourself to be online. So we got the attention of a bunch of venues here locally and the radio stations. And I really credit that one move to kind of laying the foundation for us to end up winning multiple Best Band in Denver competitions and putting us on the road with people like Korn and Slipknot and Linkin Park. And we were able to play a lot of shows with these guys. So we almost made it, but not quite. So that was really my intro to AI. And then once I got into real estate, I realized the similarity between being a professional musician and an agent. It's very, very similar as far as, like, when we're not playing a show, we're trying to find the next show. We're constantly marketing ourselves. We're constantly writing new material, right? So there's a lot of similarities between a performing musician and a real estate agent. So realized that real quick on, and thought, okay, let's see how we can make some of these old band techniques work with this. And that's kind of how it just started to unfold.
I would have never thought that analogy, but as you share it, it makes exact sense, right?
Yeah.
And like a musician, how many things do you do for free without getting paid, right? Like it, right? So it's very similar to how we feel, I think, as realtors, where it's like I think almost all of us feel where our dollar per hour is almost zero sometimes.
Yeah.
So, okay, you had that little bot thing. That's cool. That's a cool little story about how that popped and you kind of felt the power of technology and how it could support you. When
Yeah.
you started diving into the world of ChatGPT, um, where did you go first? Like, where was the first play to say, I'm seeing this, this is evolving, I'm excited. Where did you default go to support your business and real estate?
Yes. So I first heard of ChatGPT from my sister. She's also in the real estate industry as well. And she's like, hey, there's this new AI thing out where you can chat with it and it's like a Google, you know? So I
Right.
thought, all right, well, great, you know, let's see what this is. Um, and I quickly realized that it was much more than Google, right? Like as it was has the conversational approach of response, its ability to browse the web, which it couldn't do at that point in time. That was something that came later, but I realized that we probably had our hands on something that we've never seen before. And then, you know, with the media chiming in the background, everybody was really like, oh, Chat GPT this. So I thought, you know, I might need to go into a little bit more detail and research on it. So started researching large language models as a whole, how they function, and then just started saying, all right, let's figure out how we can practically apply this inside of our real estate business. So I think one of the first things that I did on it was I realized I could clone myself into it and I could have it replicate my speech patterns, which takes so much off of my plate when it comes to responding to comments and writing emails and even negotiating, right?
So
So,
you went right into the copywriting world a little bit, is that right? Like,
yeah.
can it support some faster execution? And I think I'm glad you kind of bring that up because that's where a lot of people are stuck too right now. Like that, but you and I have been pushing this for a while, you way more than me, and I'm just like pushing it down the field to say, hey, play, and I'm playing. It seems like agents that I'm getting texts back from to say, oh my goodness, it's helping me with like that subject line that I just wasn't able to click send around. Now I got something cool and hooky and I would have never thought about it. And they threw in emojis in, right? And
Yep.
it's like, I just like they struggle to send an email, right? Because they're just like, I just don't know how to write this properly. I feel like I'm coming across wrong. And I'm getting these texts where like, I can't believe how much better this is making me sound. And so that's where you went. That's where a lot of people are just starting with. Is that fair? And the people were talking about listing descriptions and stuff, right? So is
Right.
that, as I say all this, um, where did it, how long did you just stay in that vein, meaning in like copywriter mode?
You know, not very long. Because basically what I did is I took a perspective of it right out the gate where I was like, okay, it seems to me like this is something that can basically do research for us very, very quickly too, right? As well as duplicating my speech patterns and doing this creation. I'm like, well, this thing's plugged into like this thing's trained on 1.8 trillion parameters, right? So basically everything on the internet, right? And then I found out that there was this thing called the pile, which is like this pile of data that the tech industry kind of shares conglomerately with a bunch of this training data that they use to train these models on. And when I realized how vast the pile was, I'm like, oh crap, like no wonder this thing can turn the results like that because it pretty much is trained on everything. So I immediately was like, wait a second. This is like my little pocket consultant on everything you could possibly imagine when it comes to real estate law, when it comes to contract compliance, when it comes to negotiation strategies, personality profiling, anything like that, right? So what I did is I just started saying, where can I use this in real estate? So I tried to use ChatGPT for like literally every single step of a transaction to see what I could get and what was functional, what actually saved me time, what took more time, and then just started to realize, okay, we can plug this here, we can plug it in here, we can plug it in here, and now I use it in like 90% of my business. Like no joke, I
Right.
use it everywhere.
You know what I love what you said there is that you started to dabble, you were super interested in it, but like there's all these moments that we wear 50 different hats in real estate and you're like, well, okay, I have to do this contract or I need to interpret this thing or I got to come up with that idea and you're like, well, how could I try this out and see if it can like support me? And like you said, sometimes it's like awesome and then sometimes you're like, no, I still just need to do that task.
Right.
So copywriting, right? Interpretation of stuff. The research bank, that pile. Actually, I've never heard that term where there's this pile.
Yeah.
And I think it hits home because we all know that we've been just developing this giant pile of data in the minds of all the online, but we're like, I know they're following me around with retargeting ads. I know they're doing these things, but now you're saying like there's just this insanity that Chat GPT has an ability to pull into, and all the other large language models.
Right.
So that research assistant, what are your favorite things that you've used it for when it comes to researching? Is it like just simple things like top 5 things to do in Denver and you want to make a YouTube video, or like, where do you go with that? Like research for us as real estate.
Yeah. So a lot of it has done like while I was in a deal, right? So I had a non-conforming property under contract that was a residential house, built residential, but the area around it turned industrial, right? So we were running into complications with the lender and the appraisal company because they didn't want to appraise the home because they said it was not highest and best use, that the property needed to be rezoned residential or industrial. And I didn't want to take that no for an answer, so I went and downloaded the county zoning guides and regulations, which is like 2,000 pages long. Then our first thought as an agent is like, well, how am I going to find this? I could sit here and try to look at chapters and read stuff, but I'm like, let's throw this into Chat GPT. Let's see if we can get it to analyze the document, tell it our situation. So I basically treated it like as if it was my little attorney, right? So I trained it on being an expert in zoning regulations and then fed it that data, right? So then and now it has a reference point, plus it has it's already known data that it was learned, that it was trained on, right? And then I just told it the story. I said, hey, this is where we're at. This is what they're saying. And it went through the whole document and it was able to pull out the CRS codes that were put in place for grandfathering properties in, because this was built in like the 1950s and it never changed from residential use. So it qualified for this grandfather clause. It was able to dig out the minimum zoning requirements of acreage for an industrial property, which was 2 acres. This property was only in a half of an acre. So it didn't even meet the requirements for the minimum requirements for an industrial property. And from there, I was like, well, great. Thank you for finding me all this information. Now let's just go ahead and draft an email that's very professional in legalese form, even that we can send off to the appraisal company and see if we can get them to change their position. So I did that and they did. They changed their position. They went out and appraised that value as a residential home. So that kind of research would have taken me days, right? I got it done in like 45 minutes. So it just took a lot of that heavy, deep research, or even sometimes, not saying that you should never contact an attorney. That would be bad advice. Always contact an attorney when in doubt. But we would have had to pay a pretty big penny to get somebody to dig that information up for us if we couldn't find it ourselves, right? And I got that pulled up on ChatGPT for $20 a month. So,
Yeah, that's an incredible case study of like proof. Plus, most agents would have not the capacity to pull that off anyways, right? It's like trying to like just understanding zoning bylaws. And I know we're supposed to know some of this stuff at surface, but a lot of us aren't trained. It takes experience to go through that long term.
right.
And wow, that's powerful. And if the results came in and you're like, this feels you could have asked it to say, I don't understand what you're submitting to me. Can you dummy it down to like grade 7, please? Like you could do
Yeah.
that because there will probably be some heavy stuff that shows up in a giant research project like that.
Yeah, I've actually done that. I'm like, hey, can you just make this for like a fifth grader? And then it'll do it and it uses like analogies. It's like, okay, so let's say you have 5 candy bars, right? And it just kind of breaks it down in a little bit more of an easy way for us to understand. And what I think a lot of people don't realize about Chat GPT is that it has the ability, like think about it as in terms of all of the data that is storytelling that it has inside of its knowledge, right? So it can tell the best of the best stories, right? And one of the
Mm.
big things that I think that the impact that it can make when we do this heavy research and we have it at least give us the understanding, but then we can have it format the email or the correspondence in such a way that it gets the message out clearly, right? And that's what I was really key about this is the email that I fired off to them really broke it down, really made it understandable. And I could not have done that on my own. I just don't have the writing skill set for that. So it puts us up to like a PhD level writer. And we can create a much more efficient system for ourselves and be more effective for our clients.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the case? Some of the naysayers would say, well, then that's not you. It's like, but now you can execute as if you have a marketing consultant, a copywriter, a research assistant, and it's like just a better enhanced version of you. If an agent was literally taking this, no, like rose-colored glasses, not using their own brain, you could see how some would get a bad rap. But when you're
Yeah.
using it to just like further enhance what the needs. I mean, that's a wild story, man. I love that you shared that because any agent listening to this could put that sort of kind of case study together for themselves, right?
Right.
Um,
And I mean,
really
you could
cool.
only imagine like the responses that I got out of that too, right? Like the lender's like, dude, how'd you know that? Right? The appraisal company's like, holy moly, you know? I had the managing broker brought in too, and the managing broker's like, I really love the way you wrote that email. And I'm like, I didn't. But here's the deal. We all want to be the CEOs of our business. Do you think the CEO of Microsoft types his email out, or do you think he yells over to his highly paid assistant to say, hey, I need you to go ahead and draft an email saying this, and that. Go ahead and make it happen, right? That's what ChatGPT is to us. It just
Mm,
does it in pretty much any format you can imagine. So I just treat it like that. I like, yes, it might draft my email, but the email is drafted based on what I wanted to say, right? So it may not be me writing it, but it's what I wanted to say written by somebody else or something else.
yeah.
And then when you go back to where I program my speech patterns into it, it sounds like it comes from me and it talks like me. So I
Tell
think
me
it's
about that
just,
a little bit. Like, how does
yeah,
somebody, if someone is like, yeah, I really want them to sound like me, because like you're a rocker, you talk a certain way.
yeah.
I'm like a prior covered engineer. I speak a certain way. How does somebody do that? Is that a pretty simple skill set to learn, or is this like massive like upgrade? Or we shouldn't talk about this today?
No, yeah, no, super simple, guys. So if you have a YouTube channel, like or anything that's recorded of you where you're speaking without a script, right? You can transcribe that and then put it into a document. And then that document, the longer it is, the more data you have, the better, right? Just like when we train a large language model, the more data, the better. So you get as much of your non-scripted transcriptions. That was kind of a mouthful. Get all that put together in a document, and you could literally upload that into ChatGPT 4.0 and say, please replicate these speaking patterns as you respond to me. And now that chat's trained on your speech style.
Oh, it's as simple as that. And if
Hmm.
you get one video online, you could do it if it's decent size. If you're
Yep.
like you or like a lot of guys you and I, help support lots of online videos, you could just keep throwing these transcriptions in and it'll continue to learn and speak like you. So that's
Yep.
fair, right?
Yep, gets better and better, right? So I have my document in Google Docs, and I'll go in there and add more to it, right? Because I've noticed that if you only have like one video that's like 7 minutes long and you throw your speech pattern in there, it doesn't have enough to really go off of. It'll try, but these are generative models, so they're trained to respond no matter what. So you'll never have ChatGPT come back to you and say, "Sorry, I don't have an answer for you on that." It will
Right.
create an answer whether it's correct or not. And that's where a lot of the caution comes into how we use this. And like you'd brought up, you can't just, put, blinders on and just go with it, because it needs to be an augmented process, right? Where we're scrutinizing the output that's coming out, making sure that it's verified and accurate, right? So you'll notice that if you put a small document of very little data in, that it tries to compensate for that, which what we call in the large language model world, we call that a hallucination, right? It
Right.
can sound convincingly wrong. Or it
Right.
can be convincingly right, but it can be absolutely wrong. So, knowing how to look for that and making sure that you're feeding it as much data as possible are the best ways to get around that.
Is there oh, that's a good point. So does somebody truly have to worry? So if we're not talking loading our speech in to
Mhm.
train its voice to be like me, but I'm a common user and I'm like asking for some copywriting, I'm asking for some descriptions. Um, is there a lot of worry from a hallucination standpoint in that world? Or it's more like most of the stuff I get back is going to be pretty darn good, where you're not feeling like it completely missed the mark and you're like, you have to when do you know that you're like potentially dealing with that, or is there a way to do that?
Yeah, yeah. So when we're copywriting and stuff like that, as long as we're giving it full, clear prompts, then we minimize the ability for it to hallucinate. And when we're
Mhm.
doing copywriting, it's a little bit different because we're allowing the model to be creative, right?
Right.
And this is where the model really shines sometimes. But when we're going into deep research or we're going into like pulling market stats off the internet, it'll try to find as much data as it can, but if it doesn't find all the data that we're asking for, sometimes it'll just put it in there so that way you get a response, right?
Mm,
So one of the quick ways that I usually know that something's going wrong inside of ChatGPT is if I ask it to perform a function which it will need to browse the web for, and it gives me an immediate answer, and it doesn't sit there and flash for a second like it's browsing the web, then that'll tell me right away, like, hold up, scrutinize this, make sure. And a really good thing that you can do with ChatGPT to see if it ever hallucinated is you can ask it to double check its work for accuracy. And if you sent it on a specific task, like browse the web and pull me the market stats for detached housing in December 2024 for Denver, you can say, did you browse the web? Yes or no. And then it will respond, nope, I'm sorry, I didn't browse the web. I pulled out of my previous data, right? Because it's trained all the way up until like August of 2024, right?
okay.
So it still has data in there in its system, but we want to get accurate data, right? So we're asking it for current data. So sometimes it'll just pull its old data, and that's a good example of hallucination. And then other times, like when we're feeding it documents, like long documents, kind of for example, that zoning one, I'll have it source itself. So I'm like, oh, okay, source this in the document where you found this information. And if it found it actually in there, it'll easily give me the spot in the document. And now it'll even pop up a little box that you can click and see the document come up a little bit. If it didn't, it'll say, my apologies. Let me reread the document and find this information again, right?
Oh, amazing.
So it's just a little bit of that. You'll get used to it as you go. You just, as you're starting to create a nice little project, just say, hey, double check your work for accuracy on that. Did you
Yeah.
actually browse the web for that task? And you'll find out real quick if it did.
And this is what we're talking about right now is requires the paid version. Is that right? Or does this?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah. Well, 4.0
does the
Mini's now out, so you can actually browse the web and stuff like that on a free version. But to be doing the advanced stuff that we're talking about here, you definitely want a plus plan.
gotcha? Yeah. So spend the few bucks as your cheapest assistant is like of all time. Right.
Of all time, yeah.
Like your VA in the Philippines compared to this is like paying a king, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, and then your output, if you learn how to prompt it right, your output is going to be on the same level as marketing agencies that get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to provide marketing services for, large corporations because it's trained on the data. Like I have a prompt that I use for creating real estate copyright where I actually have Chat GPT. Basically, what the prompt says is that you're going to be an expert copywriter with the marketing techniques and styles like In Motion Real Estate, In Beat, and some of these big real estate marketing firms. And they know based on the data that they and their advertising techniques, it can bring that type of technique into the model. So now I'm using the level of marketing that these people are paying big money for, and I'm getting it out of Chat GPT because it's trained on their data, right? Like that's the
Oh,
wonderful part about this technology is and why I call it the great equalizer.
yeah, totally. So that brings up a good point. If you didn't tell it to be and act as if you are marketing agency ABC or Gary V's VaynerX, right? You say something or like a professional Facebook ad manager. Like I don't know, like if you didn't say that with the specifics, what happens to the result difference? You know what I mean? Like does it just become quite general? It's okay. It's still sourcing good data out there. It's looking through versus like the most impressive data? Like, what's the difference there if you give it that extra little bit of juice versus not?
Yeah, so think of it like this, like a jack of all trades, master of none out the box, right?
Mm,
It's like, hey, I've got all this data, but I don't really know what direction you want to point me, and I don't read minds, right? So here's where 99.9% of agents go wrong with ChatGPT right here is they think it can actually read and reason, right? So when
right.
we're putting in a prompt to ChatGPT, it's breaking that phrase into numerical tokens. And tokens you can think of as just like chunks of words, right? So the way that a large language model works and generative AI works is it basically uses what's called like a neural network to assign weights to possible outcomes. And then it goes through and assigns different weights to all of these millions of possible outcomes until it comes down to just a few. And then the last remaining one with the highest weight assigned to it is what's going to be most likely that result. So this is like next token prediction, is what the technical term would be called, right? So if you were to go on ChatGPT right now and say, hey, how many R's are in the word strawberry? It will fail every time. It will not be able to tell you that because it doesn't actually read the word strawberry. It breaks it into little chunks, right? So people think that you can say, oh, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to help me write a YouTube script that's going to be 10 minutes long and I speak at 140 words per minute. Or I want to create a blog that's 2,000 words long. Well, if you were to do that and take that data and throw it into a text counter, you'll see that it'll never get it right. And it's because that's just not how that functions, right? Now, yes, it responds with a technology called natural language processing, right? So that's why it feels so human, but it's just predicting what's the most logical response or logical token pattern that would follow what we fed it based on its training data. Hopefully that makes sense. I know I kind of went deep with that, but in
No, it
long,
does. It actually, it, I think if people listen to that again, if they needed to, they will get it pretty quickly. Like it makes sense what you're saying that. So when we talk about like you got prompt at university, and a lot of guys will say prompt, prompt, prompt. To me, I think prompt is literally like it's just telling it what to do, but in a very specific way so that you're giving it guidance and clarity that is much better than that jack of all trades type sentence. 10,000 word blog about real estate in Denver is a lot different than 10,000 word broad blog about this, break it down into these categories and these types of things. I speak like this for moms. Like it's a lot different, right?
yeah, it's exactly, we're just pointing it down a certain path, right? So proper prompting, or what we call prompt engineering, is really important with these models because once again, it's next token predicting, right? So the more thorough we are and the more context that we put into it, the better the responses are going to be. So, every time we prompt ChatGPT, you want to be prompting it in a way that assigns a role, right?
Mm,
So that way you're telling ChatGPT, this is the role that you're going to play right now. Yes, you're trained on all this data, but we're going to block all of that out. And I want you going down this specific street right now. And that street could be, copywriting. It could be an advanced psychologist that's going to help you determine personality type so you can choose how to negotiate with with the agent on the other side of the deal, right? We put it into that specific lane. So then it knows, okay, I'm searching for data just in this specific environment, right? So that minimizes the risk of hallucinations or ChatGPT getting too creative. Then it also assigns it that role. And then following that role assignment, or what we call a role prime, you would want to assign the goal of the chat, right? So,
mm,
for example, you will act as an expert marketing agency with the, experience and accolades of somebody like in Motion Real Estate or in Beat Real Estate. And your goal is going to be to help me create copy for my listing ad that I'm going to give you the listing description of right now. And then you
mm.
upload your listing, and then ChatGPT can see the listing and say, "Oh, okay. Well, based on my expertise here, I know that you want me to create this copyright." So you can see how I pointed it in a very specific direction, versus just jumping into a new chat and saying, "Oh, I'd like to create copyright." Well, ChatGPT is gonna be like, "Copyright? Great. For what? Like food commercials?" You know what I mean? So then it'll
Right.
take whatever approach it thinks is necessary. So we just learn how to guide it in a lot of detail, to make sure that those
Okay.
prompts come back with what we want.
So you open up ChatGPT, you're in the right one. You said it's the 4.0, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Um,
4.0. Yeah.
yeah. So, and you upload a YouTube thing. This is just a general chat. I've heard the term custom GPT. I have
hmm
one. Do you have to like create your own Darren Adam personal custom GPT to load like your transcript into to learn, or are you going right back to the main, open up another chat and off you go?
Yeah, so you can do either or.
Okay.
Now, I'm a heavy, heavy user of ChatGPT. I've got thousands of hours into it now. And GPTs have kind of fallen off because the GPTs, the custom GPTs are off of the flagship GPT-4 Turbo model, right?
Right.
Now, that is still a major model, but 4 Omni came out recently, well, a few months back. 4 Omni came out, and it's a completely retrained model. And not only that, but they changed the browse with Bing function on it. Then it has a lot more clear ability to browse the web and find the answers in a more efficient manner. So, in my opinion, and statistically speaking, based on benchmark testing with the model, 4.0 is a significantly more advanced and more capable model. So I can't create a custom GPT with the 4.0 technology at the moment. So what I've been doing is I'll still use my GPT that if I need it to like, respond to an email or respond to a comment. But if I'm like creating scripts based on market research, then I will do what's called hypertrain a chat. And I will just take a brand new 4.0 chat and I'll upload my business explain document, which is a prompt that I share with agents that teaches ChatGPT everything about your business, your goals, your aspirations, your target audience, all of this stuff, right? And I put that in a document, and then I grab my speech patterns document. I upload those two documents into a chat, and then it basically becomes my clone. So from
Oh,
there,
yeah.
I can say, I want you to go do this, right? And then it'll automatically know everything and all the
So
content.
that's your way to use the most current structure with these two baselines, which is I speak this way and my business is like that. And
Yeah,
you'll load those both quickly, just drag and drop, and then go into town with the prompting and the specifics you need. And yeah,
exactly.
sure, it's another step, but it's not a big step, right?
No, it's
Yeah.
it's 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 wild because sometimes it'll take me longer because I'm a serial custom GPT creator, so I have very large amounts of them, and you got to scroll on Chat GPT to find these things, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I laugh and I'm like, why am I even looking for my AI clone at the bottom of this list that I created 2 years ago when I could just open
Mm,
the chat, upload the documents, and have my clone programmed right there on a better model? So 9 times out of 10, that's what I'm using now.
cool, cool, cool. So thinking through, and you do this for realtors, you teach realtors, and you and I have talked about like follow-up plans in your CRM, like what to say when, what cadence to put it at. Like follow-up is
Yeah.
like literally not trained in real estate, and nobody knows
Right.
how to do it, and everybody doesn't want to sound salesy, but we all hope that one day all these leads don't fall through the cracks. So you've gone ahead and said that basically, and you've created support for your long-term follow-ups in Lofty
Yep.
where every agent could you could kind of like to me, am I right in saying that with a little guidance, you never have to think about what to say next now? Like you can create these drips, you can create these one-offs, these evergreen things so much easier now.
Yeah.
Yes, you still have to do the work, put the damn thing into a smart drip, figure out when you send it by, but you're getting some coaching where you wouldn't have had it before. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I used to, so I was very big into CRMs from the beginning of my career. So I used to actually just manually do this, right?
Right.
I realized right away that the canned email campaigns that come with that and the automatic drip campaigns that come with the CRM, they're 9 times out of 10, they're junk. They're very salesy. They have very low open rates and it hurts your email reputation and all that good stuff. So it's a real bad start to happen. So I would always go in there and I would start changing the language because I'd read this and I'm like, that doesn't sound like me. And if I ever talk to this person, they're going to know that's not me. So I would start rewriting all of these drips. And I hate salesmen. I'm just going to say it right now. I hate salesmen. I don't think you should be tricked into buying anything. There shouldn't be anything like that. I think there's levels to the game where we can be advisors and consultants and still help keep the dream alive in our clients because as you know, real estate's a funky game. One day our clients like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and the next they're like, no, I'm not. So there's room for helping them keep that dream alive with psychology and stuff like that. But the whole marry the house, date the rate. Oh, we need to buy right now because interest rates could go up and it's easier to buy or go down and it's easier to buy now. I always felt like if I got approached with that, like I would be that would be a turn off for me, right? And
Sure.
some people might be okay with it. And I'm not saying that those methods don't work, but I think that as a society, we're very quickly moving away from that. People just want education, they want information, and then they want to make their own decisions, right? So I took that approach early on in my CRM game, and would write these out manually. Well, now with ChatGPT, I can take something that would take me a few days and do it in less than an hour, and I can now create drip campaigns for every single like mode that they're in. So if I get a first time home buyer that comes in on Facebook, I have a campaign specifically for that. But not only do I have a campaign specifically for how they came in on Facebook, but then once I get a hold of them, I have a campaign that's specific for whatever leg of the journey they're going to go on. So if they're 0 to 3 months out, I send them on a certain campaign that's custom created for that time frame. If they're 6 to 12 months out, I send them on that, right? So I have all of these different things and I'm able to curate these plans not only in my speaking style, but with my sales style as well, which helps bring out my personality. So regularly inside my CRM, I get multiple-year-old drips or multiple-year-old leads that'll come out and be like, "Hey, Adam, sorry I never responded to your text or emails, but I've been opening them and I think I'm ready to buy a house." And it's just it's created, a consistent level of business to come out of my CRM that's 90% automated, right?
Totally.
And the ability to do this now with AI, there's really no excuse for any agent out there to be using canned drips or not using their CRM. It's very easy and simple to set up with this technology, and it can change the game for you.
And if you didn't have any idea of like what a follow-up plan is supposed to be, like I'm day one in real estate, I've been told to follow up on my lead. Well, you could reach into ChatGPT and you could say that exact thing, help me get there. I don't know how many touches, like all of this stuff, which is like
Yeah.
you would normally have to hire coaches and other stuff. And not to say don't hire coaches, but some of this like simple baseline info is there for you. I know I'm pointing a lot of my team members because I have a group of 100 agents on my team. I'm trying to train them to the use case because it's better than I will ever be. It's got more experience than I have ever had. And like you can probably get 80, 90% of the way there on a lot of things. So it's like you use me for a different level now. Right? Not that I'm not important for that. It's just you have somebody better. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Who is
Yeah.
trained on everything. Um, Agents also, I've been using a lot of content creation, like just for like ideas, because we know that we're these social beasts and a lot of us are doing YouTube and creating online and digital touches.
Yeah.
Have you found anything kind of extra spicy and fun around like content creation for yourself? Ideas for, because I know a lot of people struggle. For some of it is time, some of it is like I don't know the way I like it, the way I look, can't get away from that. But it's just like, what do I say? And I want it to be my voice. Like, you know what I mean? Again, because like realtors feel like they're supposed to do this stuff and then they end up copy and pasting what everybody else is doing and none of it's authentic to Adam or Darren, right?
Mhm.
So like any ideas that come to mind that we could share with the folks?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I think the biggest thing that you could do is train ChatGPT on your business. And what I'll do with you today, Darren, is I'll share a prompt with you that you can share with the podcast audience. You can
Oh,
either throw
cool.
a link or something like that. But this is called a Learn My Business prompt. So
Mm,
you're going to go through this. It's going to be a conversation between you and ChatGPT, and it's going to take a minute. Like this, if you do this right, it's a 2 or 3 hour process minimum. And what you're going to do is you're going to train ChatGPT on everything about your business, right? So then anytime you open up ChatGPT, you can upload this document and then you can start talking to ChatGPT. You're like, "Hey, ChatGPT, like we'd assign a role to it, obviously, like, right, we upload the document with our business explained, and then we'd assign a role. ChatGPT, I need you to act as an expert script creator for YouTube. And I would like to create a YouTube video, but I don't really know what subjects to cover. Please read my business document and give me ideas,"
mm.
right? And then you'll see it'll come back and be like, "Oh, Adam, well, I see that you specialize with first-time home buyers and you love the blue collar worker market. So why don't we create an idea like a blue collar worker's guide to buying your first house?" And it just
So
tosses you these different ideas, right? And then you can take these ideas and say, "Hey, can we expand on this? I'd like to also talk about this." And then you just start building onto it. And then eventually you've got this entire outline for the perfect video.
it's like it's mind-boggling, man. It's mind-boggling just like when you just consider it as a source, as a resource, rather than this like tech thing that I like, a lot of people think like I'm not good at tech, right? This is not that, right? This is more like I'm not good at about thinking as a human and like
Yeah,
how to like expedite, it's like a totally
exactly.
different world. Where is it at from some of the cool stuff? Like, because again, the use cases are awesome, but like, where is it at with, so it's reading the web right now. That wasn't the case, what, 3 months ago?
No, we've had this for about a year now.
Okay.
Yeah, it was ChatGPT 4. They quickly released Browse with Bing on it. So it's been around for a while, a year and a half now.
Okay.
But it's consistently gotten better. It was pretty trash on the GPT-4 model. It wasn't very good. But there's so much advancements happening right now. So like we've talked a lot today about GPT-4o.
Sure.
But that's not even really the newest model right now, right? They released a new model called GPT-4o Canvas, which is currently in beta. So we don't know what the full version is going to look like on that. But basically, they took the power of GPT-4o and then they integrated a word editor inside of it. So it's almost like GPT and Microsoft Word kind of joined forces, right? So as we're creating scripts and stuff now, I can actually edit right inside of Chat GPT instead of having to have it rewrite a whole section, right? When I don't like a certain thing about it. I can
Oh,
highlight
crazy.
certain
Okay.
pieces on it. Yeah, it's amazing. And as a matter of fact, I'm glad that you mentioned this because this is the number one model I'm using right now because there's
Mm.
so much stuff that we do as agents where we might want to just change a little section of it. And instead of copying the whole document, bringing it into Word, changing what you want, then telling ChatGPT to rewrite this subject, this section here, and then having to rewrite it and go, no, I think I like that first section better. So let's take this chunk of this, put it in the document. We'll grab this last piece of this, put it in the document. Now it can all be done right inside of there, right? So for example, I'm negotiating a contract right now on a business proposition, and I uploaded the document into ChatGPT, and I said, how does this align with like current 1099 laws? Are there any suggestions that you'd make? What questions do you have for me? And we basically figured everything out that we wanted to. And then it opens up this canvas mode and I can go through it and say, okay, let's change this part right here. And then I'll tell it what I want to say. And then it'll rewrite just that little section. So it makes it a very much more functional editor, right? And it's a game changer. Plus, it's got 4.0 technology, so we still have the browse with Bing function. We can still have
Right.
it generate images. We can still upload documents to it. So it's a really cool new way to use it, and it's for Plus users only at the moment. So if you're not a Plus subscriber, you won't see this option. But yeah, that's one of the big things that I think is changing. And then they've also released a new model. Now, this might be a rabbit hole we don't have enough time to go down, but they have we're currently in what's called generative intelligence, right? Or what's called narrow AI. And we're on our way to what's called artificial general intelligence. And for those of you that don't know, artificial general intelligence is basically when the AI becomes sentient, right? Where it can think on its own, it can train itself on its own. It no longer needs human interaction to continue to better itself. We're not there yet. We're still a ways away, but we have reached a new stage or a new level in this, right? And OpenAI has just released a new model that is being previewed in the ChatGPT platform, but it will not be a GPT model. It's going to come over in its own model once they're done previewing it, but it's called O1 preview and
I see that
O1
there.
mini.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is a reasoning model. This is something that ChatGPT couldn't do before. So we had talked about the example of how many R's are in the word strawberry. If you ask O1 preview how many R's are in the word strawberry, it will get it right. And the reason is because it's a reasoning model. So versus being a generative pre-trained transformer or a next token predictor, this actually uses human level chain of thought reasoning.
Oh,
Okay.
well.
So it can read and it can count now. Okay. But it's not multimodal. So I can't browse the internet with it. I can't upload documents. I can't generate images with it. And it's just in this beta model. But we're taking these steps towards AI. And you guys have might towards AGI. And you might have even heard the term agents flying around a lot lately if you listen to it. Oh, AI agents, AI agents. Well, this is basically the next step. And this is where we're going to hit in 2025 is O1 preview will become its own model. And then we will start to have what we call AI agents or agentic workflows where the AI can actually perform functions that were typically needed to be performed by a human on your computer. So for example, it would be able to, open up a folder, download a file, put that information into a CSV file, array that CSV file into a certain list, and then send that off and create documents on it. Like something
Holy
that we
smokes.
can't do right now is coming very quickly. So this technology is continuously advancing so fast, which is why my YouTube channel is really tailored towards a lot of these AI
And
updates.
why it's growing, because so many people are like, how do I keep up with this? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
For a realtor right now, O1 preview, is there any real factor around that yet? Or is that like we
Yes.
don't really need to play? Or is there like a use case for it right
Oh
now,
yeah,
do you think?
big
Oh,
time.
there is. So what
Yeah,
would be a
big
like
time.
a current load O1 preview use case that we would play with?
Yeah, I would go into O1 Preview and I would use that as my project manager on creating new stuff, right? So, for example, you and I are both real estate coaches, right? Now, for coaches, it's a little bit different, but you can plan an entire project with that human level chain of thought process, right? So think of it like this. Let's say that you are ready for the new year. All of us are getting ready to probably run SWOT analysis on our business, right? Because it's the
Yeah.
new year, we got to get our goals set. Well, what you could do is you could run that SWOT analysis as O1 Preview being your advisor and consultant through that, right? So you could say, okay, here's what my strengths, my weaknesses are. How should I approach this to improve on this? And with that human level chain of thought, we get significantly better output because the model actually thinks.
Mm.
I wish I had it pulled up right now. I would demo it for you guys, but you'll see when you actually employ O1 Preview, and you still want to prompt it the same way. It's a little better at reading your mind than 4.0 is, but you prompt it very well, and then you'll see its chain of thought process. So it still tokenizes, right? So it still breaks it into tokens, but it can actually understand what those tokens would be in words, read those words, double check itself for accuracy, and then move on to the next step. So it does take a lot longer to respond. A lot of the times I'll be giving it something to do, like I use it to create my market update videos.
Oh yeah.
So when I'm creating my market update videos, basically I tell ChatGPT, here's the format that I want to use, or O1 Preview, sorry. I tell O1 Preview, this is the format that I want to use. And it'll take 20 to 30 seconds to respond because it goes through the exact steps that I want and it thinks about it versus just, saying, okay, this is the next weight that would be assigned to this, right?
Mm.
And it's phenomenal. The results are
Very cool.
absolutely amazing. Louis, he was joking with me. He's like, "Oh man, because they limit us on prompts on those right now." So just for you, so you guys know, sorry if my computer keeps going off. I thought I had it on mute. Um, so just so you know, you're limited to prompts on O1 Preview. You get 30 prompts on O1 Preview per week and 50 prompts on O1 Mini per week. So
I
Louis
gotcha.
dives in, man, and he's going to town. He's like, "Oh, I'm stuck for the next week." So it's definitely a very good model at the point at where it is right now. And while we have access to it for the same cost as our Plus thing, I would recommend to use it as much as you physically can
Yep.
because it will eventually probably be its own separate model and an additional fee to use.
Gotcha. But we can't load anything into it right now.
That's correct. Yeah, so you
Okay, gotcha.
couldn't upload your My Business Explain document or your speech patterns,
Gotcha.
but you
Yep.
can copy and paste them. Like I've done that
Oh, I
once.
see.
Now,
Right.
you have what's called the contextual output limit or token limit. So if you put too much text in there, then it'll start forgetting, just like on the regular chat GPT.
Yeah.
So you got to watch out for that, but there's ways around it where you just have it summarize everything, right? And then you create a new summary and then it kind of resets its memory and you can keep going.
So you talked about that editing Word doc and stuff was super cool.
Mhm.
Can that canvas also like pull out can you actually download the Word doc and can you download a spreadsheet now? Not just like it looks like a spreadsheet, you can copy paste and use it in your own format, but is it actually creating the spreadsheet that's like a downloadable CSV file now or an XLS file?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
my favorite
crazy.
part about it, right? So it's got
Cool.
coding ability on the back end, so it can do this stuff, right?
That's neat.
So I
Because
have
that's
a
just like
video,
one less step for an agent to have to like figure out. And most
yeah,
agents aren't great in the overall Microsoft suite set of things, anyways.
me either,
Um,
man. Like I
right?
don't do Excel very well, and I wanted to create an Excel sheet that that basically we could put the profit first formula into, and it would tell you how to allocate your funds, and even have a pie chart. I just told ChatGPT to make it for me, and it did, right? I would have had no idea how to set that up. So it's really, really awesome on some of the stuff it can do. It can create
Does it
interactive
know stuff?
graphs.
Like you mentioned Profit First. Does it know what Profit First book is all about? Like, is it like, it does, like it
Yeah.
has read that book somehow and it could create the strategy based on, or if you want to learn Robert Kiyosaki's, like, whatever he's talking about, or it does have that level of intel. Like these are all copyrighted information that somebody published, but somehow that's all within the pile. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's the controversial side of this whole technology is that a lot of the companies are like, "Well, this isn't fair. You trained the data on our copyrighted material, right?" The New York Times has a lawsuit against OpenAI right now for stealing their news articles. Um, but the crazy thing is that on the other side of the coin, they're like, "Well, you're putting it on the internet for public information and public consumption, and we trained it based on that." right? So there's a big war right now legally going on between this, and we don't know what's going to happen with it, but it looks like the census is like, hey, they had to train the data somehow, and because it's generative AI, it's not actually like plagiarizing or anything like that,
Sure. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if you go into Chat GPT 4.0 right now and just say, hey, have you ever heard of the Profit First book? It'll give you a pretty good detail on exactly
Oh,
what it is.
crazy. Just
It's actually funny. Maybe this is bad influence, but my son's in high school and they gave him a big book to read with a book report, right? And I'm like, dude, just summarize it with Chat GPT, get all the key points, have Chat GPT quiz you about it, and then write your report. And he did, and he got a good grade, And it's just, and it's like, is this cheating?
well,
I'm
we
like,
have to
no, it's
relearn how to learn,
right,
right? It
exactly.
isn't the old way. And there's this weird spot in the world where we're at, where it's like that old, like you would have been slapped on the wrist for that is because we now can, instead of memorizing doing that, what else can we do with real brains, right?
Right.
And um, how does somebody like, so from a chat GPT, so a lot of people are like, okay, then I got to go, I got the market update, but I want an infographic and I want like that kind of stuff. Like, is there tools out there where agents can use all the stuff, but then pull and create like graphics and pie charts and things like that, that again, take a real skill or a marketing background to do? Is there tools like that work with this yet or no?
Yes. Actually, one that just came out recently is called Napkin AI. So if you go to napkin.ai, what it is it's an AI app that actually generates graphics based on the context that you on the content that you put into it.
Oh,
So
cool.
you could potentially build a blog in ChatGPT, copy that blog, paste it in a napkin, and then napkin will basically see that blog. And if you click on a section of text, like let's say we're doing a market stat report and we're looking at the, close to list price ratio compared to days on market or whatever, right? You can click that section and it'll automatically generate a graphic or a pie chart or a flow chart or an image that can associate with that content to help liven up our blogs. And
Oh, cool.
it's free right now, so get in there and use it while it's free. But yeah, the image generation technology is rapidly advancing right now. So I think that that's going to be another big thing coming in 2025 is our ability to really do stuff like that.
Totally. Like, because an agent will want it to be on brand and they want it to be on color and they want it to be on style. Like,
Yep.
I see that, like, I've got the Dolly plugin, is there, do you use it much? Do you, as far as like Dolly to create images where it's like, or have you just not found a use case really?
Yeah, I'm a habitual image generator. I use it for all my blog images. Now
Yeah.
I've gone away from Dolly a little bit for certain things because I like more realism in the images. So I'll use like Midjourney, which is finally on a standalone platform right now, and you don't have to use it through Discord. So if anybody's listening that's tried this before, it was very complicated.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
It's much more simple to use now, and ever since they released version 6.1, it's very, very good at realism and just not having to be so or technically prompted. Before Midjourney, you had to prompt it in a certain way to get good results out of it. But yeah, Dolly's great. It's just not going to be as realistic.
Sure.
But yeah, I recommend playing around with that because there's so many use cases. Like I use Midjourney to create like just like B-roll type stuff, not B-roll, that's more video, but like stock images that we would typically want to use for either our listing presentations or just whatever we're using the stock images for. I use on Midjourney, so I have pictures of houses that I would use for like running ads,
Mm,
for like, oh, check my first time home buyer program out, and I used a stock image of a house, and like you cannot tell that I AI generated it. It looks
very
phenomenal.
cool.
Looks like it's in my area. So tons of
What
use
about
cases.
like image creation with text, like i.e. a really crazy thumbnail that you would use on YouTube where you're having to mix usually the text title as some really poppin'. Is that there yet or you still really need a graphic designer?
Yeah, not
Okay,
there yet. AI doesn't like to spell properly.
gotcha.
So, so yeah, we're still running into issues with that. But what I do have, I do show people how to do is how to create the background for that thumbnail. And
Right.
then you can bring it into Canva and throw your image over it and
Excellent.
your text and stuff like that.
Oh, cool. So yeah, it's just some layers there again if somebody
Mhm.
wants to just expand. Um, can you tell us like why somebody would play on because when I talk to people, they're ChatGPT, like we just talked, we spent an hour basically on this. We could go on for 20. And then there's other sites where people are using as well, and one of them that comes to mind is Perplexity.
Yes.
Why use that versus like what's the difference and why should somebody care? Like, is there a reason to need to know both, or can someone just play in chat and be very happy? And what are they missing, if
Okay.
anything?
Yeah, so Perplexity is actually an answers engine that uses a large language model to respond. So a lot of the misconception with that is that Perplexity is another large language model, but it's not. It's designed to go scrub the web and find answers, and it just uses a large language model to respond. So up until about a couple weeks ago, this was the best way to do real hard research because I could go through Perplexity, I could scrape data off the web that typically ChatGPT doesn't get access to because a lot of these companies, once again, are upset with their data being exposed to ChatGPT. So they're going in the back end of their code on their website and they're putting blockers in that knows when ChatGPT is trying to scrape. Perplexity was able to get around this a lot better. So, for example, you could put a website or you could put a Facebook link for a personal Facebook page into ChatGPT 4.0 and it'll say it can't read it. I
Mm.
could put it into Perplexity with having Claude 3.5 Sonnet respond as a large language model and it'll pull the data. So I was using up until a couple of weeks ago, and I'll get to why in a second, but that's where I would pull my data on because it was more designed to as an answers engine and data scraper than it is as a large language model. One of the things about Perplexity too that was really unique is that you could plug different large language models into it. So by default, if you were not a Perplexity Plus subscriber, you would be using Llama's, well, what they call Sonar Huge, but it's based on Llama, which is Meta's large language model.
Oh yeah.
And that is what they would use to respond. But as a pro user, I can go into the back end and I can say, I didn't like the way Llama responded to that. I want to use Claude 3.5 Sonnet to respond. And then I could use that large language model from Anthropic to be able to get my response. And
That seems super technical. Like the average
yes,
realtor doesn't need, do they don't, that wouldn't really matter. Is that fair? Yeah,
um,
or would it? Or is there
yeah,
something
it
there that's like
does
a
though.
nuance that's like, yeah, you guys, you just might need to know this.
Yeah, you might need to know this because one of the things that I've realized by testing all of these different large language models out is that some of them respond a little bit better. So Anthropic's Claude, which is available as a standalone outside of Perplexity, is a great large language model. It's a really good writer. It really sounds human when it writes. Everybody knows that has been around ChatGPT for a couple of minutes that there's a certain ChatGPT language, right? And
Sure.
even when we're using our speech patterns to replicate it, there's still a certain structure in the way that it forms sentences and paragraphs that are really kind of chat GPT. And
Yeah, I gotcha.
Claude,
Yep.
Claude is a much more human-like writer, but it's not connected to the internet, right?
Mm,
So it's like, I can't use it there. I'd have to go get all the data from there. So what Perplexity does is Perplexity was able to bring Claude in on the back end, but still make it connected to the internet.
oh, cool.
So a lot of the times when I'm scraping market data, I'll scrape it and I'll use Claude 3.5 Sonnet to help me create the script. And you can also upload your speech patterns into Perplexity as well. So Perplexity is a very powerful tool. I'd recommend you research it. I've got a couple videos on my YouTube about it, but
Amazing.
it's definitely important to know and learn. And I know it sounds like a lot, but it's really not. It just seems like that on the forefront. But a couple of weeks ago, ChatGPT released a function that is now once again only available for Plus subscribers at the moment, but it's called Search GPT or
Okay.
Search Mode. And that is ChatGPT's response or OpenAI's response to Perplexity because
Okay.
Perplexity started gaining popularity very, very quickly. And Chat and OpenAI is like, wait, we got to figure this out. So they have now a Perplexity like search function. But the problem that I have with that is that it's still using 4.0. And most of these websites have tried to block ChatGPT, right? Where Perplexity can still get through.
Hmm.
So this is stuff that happens on the back end. I know we're going a little too deep down the
So the
rabbit
only way
hole.
to keep up with this is to keep up with Adam, basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
hit me
and
up,
just follow
man.
Adam. So Adam, where do you where are you consistent with this? Where can people follow your world to just stay on this, knowing you're a practitioner like us? You're not just a coach, you're coaching on something you love and have had to do. There's a lot
Yep.
of coaches out there that do nothing to do with real estate, but yet they're coaches. And you and I know that doesn't always work out so well for the average agent trying to
Yep.
better themselves. Um, yeah. So is it Adam Gillespie YouTube or what is your YouTube?
Yeah, my YouTube, if you just search YouTube for Adam Gillespie, I will pull up.
Yep.
Luckily, I seem to be the number one Adam Gillespie on YouTube right now. But if you search Google for Adam Gillespie AI, you'll be able to find pretty much everything. I'm
Awesome.
pretty active on Instagram and Facebook as well. But YouTube's where you want to go to get the knowledge. Instagram and Facebook, you'll get a little bit more insights to my inner life, and I drop a little bit more tips, but it's more of the
Sure.
personal side. So if you want to get to know Adam, the raw Adam, hit me up on Instagram. But for education, like, yeah, definitely hit my YouTube up. I usually have an update video coming out every week, as well as a tutorial on something AI, CRM, or automation related.
Cool. Yeah, and he's got, just so you guys all know, he's got a Calendly link on there. So if you did want to, like, you know what, I just need a little more and a little Adam time. So please go down the rabbit hole with Adam if this feels like you're missing the boat and you want to get kind of taught up. And then of course, Agent Prompt university is available as well
Yeah.
as a full out course for you to just really dive into. So it's an exciting time, right? There's just so much available. I know my personal execution is going up, right? I was always fairly disciplined. Those who end up in any level of top performance have some level of like consistent discipline, not always motivation, and that's usually their secret sauce, right? It's
Yeah.
nothing else. But now with everything that we talked about today and all the layers for which Adam consults to, there's so many more there's a gap happening, isn't there, between those who are using it well and just rocketing all of their abilities versus those that saying like that feels like it's just a cool thing and I don't really need it. And there's a huge differential, isn't there?
Yeah, big time. Measurable differences right now in GCI, in overall productivity, available time. I think that's really one of the biggest things, right? Is if you learn how to use this technology properly, you're going to have a significant more amount of time to do the things that are important to you, whether that's
Mm.
family or making more money, getting more deals in. But even my clients have come back to me and been like, "Man, you're really on it. Like you're able to respond to me right away." And it's not AI that does that. One of the big disclaimers that I like to tell people is like, we use AI to nurture the lead. Once the lead becomes a client, you need to be there personally. We can have certain levels of artificial intelligence to be there as a buffer or as an add-on for our services. Like I do have my own chat bot that they can chat with and get answers at 3 o'clock in the morning that without having to bother me. So there's like a little bit of a bonus for them. And I'm very open with my use of AI with my clients. But because of all of the tedious administrative tasks that I can have handled automatically via I have more time to spend and respond to my clients than I ever have before. And I got more time to spend with my kids and my wife. And that's the thing. And I think that's the big thing that we all lose the quickest in this industry is our time. So this could be a real big game changer. It will be a real big game changer. And those of us that are deploying this technology, it's going to be hard to keep up with us if you're not doing it too.
Yeah, I mean, I I write an e-series for agents, as you guys know. I post on social media. Gosh knows I don't love all parts of this, right? Some people love, they're so creative and they're great at coming up with great ideas, right? Some guys are just great writers and like that the description to make your Instagram post better, they just love playing that game,
Yeah.
right? Some are like, you know what, I just like I'm a goofball with hashtags and off I go. But like very few of us are all of the above, right? So it's like
Yeah.
for me, I know what I want to say, but I don't always have the time to fully or want to get it to a point of like articulating this 500 word email. But I do know like the main points I want to hit. And I'm using it for things like, can you source three great quotes that go along with my personal message that I just want to get across and pull it together into something that's concise? It is helping me for little things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're rolling ahead, you're executing more, and it's not losing any semblance of who I am. It's just putting a bit of a megaphone out there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you become highly efficient at your job. And like I said it earlier, it's an augmented process to it. So, the better you get at it, the more you learn to implement it, then just the more you start realizing like, damn, like this thing can actually do a little bit better of a job than I can on a lot of stuff. So we become, more dependent on it. And with that, I know we're getting short on time, but with that, I want people to understand that this is not a replacement, right? if you try to use ChatGPT to just replace everything that you do, then inherently you're probably going to become more dumb, right? This is a consultative approach with ChatGPT. I want you to think that you have access to the world's best consultant on any subject at any time. So it's important that the way we engage with ChatGPT and the way that we use ChatGPT, that we're still learning, right? Like you bring up a really good way about like when you're writing an email and it's a going to be a 500 word long drawn out email. That's going to take time and energy to do. But if you can get really quickly out to a robot that this is what I want the context of this email to be, then it can take the time to do that. Then it saves you a serious amount of time and a serious amount of brain power, so you're not as burned out at the end of the day, right? So think of it just more as a consultative augmented approach, not a complete replacement of yourself. So when you're researching and stuff like that, consistently engage, ask the questions to get more clarity on it, because that's what it's there for, right? And then you'll find out that, with like, for example, with my zoning regulations case there, like I learned so much throughout that process, but I never read anything out of the manual myself. I let ChatGPT do all the heavy lifting and just help me understand on an easier level, right?
Mhm.
So like we're learning much, much faster than we typically could before. So you just need to use it with that consultative way.
Quick one before we go. Have you ever used it to role play?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So there's the new advanced voice mode feature in ChatGPT, and it's got very little latency for the response time. So I consistently show my agents how to, I'll say, okay, ChatGPT, you're going to act as an extremely difficult for sale by owner, but you're going to have the knowledge base of a PhD level psychologist, and you will use advanced neurolinguistic programming against me while I try to book an appointment with you. I want you to get increasingly frustrated with me, but still, if I can convince you to book the appointment, we'll go that route. And oh, every time I do a live demo of this, I get shredded by ChatGPT. But it's really cool because in the end, you can say, okay, where did I go wrong with that? What should I have done better? And ChatGPT will coach you on what you could have done better to get around those objections. So this is an amazing tool. I highly recommend that you use it. And on that note, too, it's an amazing translator. I have some Russian clients right now, and he's a good friend of mine. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm going to test something on you. So I've been emailing him our entire transaction in Russian, and he's like, this is perfect.
Right, I
So
know. I've been
it's great.
joking around and sending swear words to my buddies, and in like Arabic, and it's just like it is so hilarious. Uh, but I love that you do that role play because so many of us are scared. Like I'm hosting a role play session next week, and then another one, and the agents don't want to come. Like they're scared, and we say we want to practice with each other rather than your clients. We say this all the time, and so do coaches. But it's like, well, now you can actually practice by yourself and you can really give it a go. Yes, you don't have that personal interaction and all this stuff, but like at least with rhythm and repetition, we will get closer to not stalling when we're at the front door when you've given it that simple voice prompt. I love it, man.
Yeah.
Your favorite thing before you go about like where does your excitement land? Number one excitement piece for where we're going with this in the say short term between now and 6 months. Anything come to mind where you're like most excited about?
Yes, AI agents, 100%. I think that once the reasoning model is completely finished, now that the election's over, we're going to start seeing a lot of this coming out. So we'll see reasoning models coming with the agentic capabilities to it, which will really take a lot of stuff off of our plate. So like right now, for example, I have to manually scrape the web for the data with Perplexity or ChatGPT to get my market stats. When the agentic capability comes out for artificial intelligence, this is something that I can have on a timer that every morning at 6 a.m. my computer will automatically pull those stats, put it into a spreadsheet, put it into Chat GPT, create it in my style, and when I come to sign on to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'll open it up and my script will be ready for me to perform.
Oh,
So excited.
wow.
Like
Well, I
it's
think
gonna
that's a
be,
great place to leave. I know you've got a call to get on. I've got
yeah.
stuff to do. This has been well over like an hour a bit, but like 10 hours worth of value. Thank you so much. Hopefully everybody listening. Adam, I appreciate your time and I know this is so exciting for you. I appreciate the rabbit holing and stuff because
Yeah.
there's a lot of excitement here, but yet we hit some really tactical, simple things to get at. So I think this will be great and maybe we have you on for another one too, just to
Yeah, let's do
expand
it.
upon this. So thank you everybody. My Re-Education Experience listeners, and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Darren. Appreciate you, man.